welcome. I'm Daniel from the Sool Company, and this is my partner in crime,
Julia from the Sool Company.
Yay! And we're here today with another one of our fantastic, world-famous tasting videos.
World famous.
World famous.
Yes.
We're on the internet now.
Well, that's the world.
So today we have a special brew that was actually introduced to us about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago.
Not very long ago. This is a new bottle in our repertoire.
And it doesn't mean it's a new bottle in the world. It's actually a very, very old recipe, but it's new to us. And we're always very excited to try something that is new and share it with you guys. So today we will be drinking
Arirang Magkeolli.
from the Sambongpyo Brewery in Wonju in Gangwon-do.
And if you've never been to Wonju, I highly recommend it. Wonju is a beautiful city. I just feel like it's a place where you should check it out because there's beautiful air, there's a lot of really nice facilities, and there's good makgeolli. So it's really worth a day trip. It's not very far from Seoul.
Yeah, and actually, I wasn't lucky enough to visit the brewery, but Julia has been there. She's
very
seen
lucky.
the magic behind the curtain. And I'm really looking forward to a chance for us to have a trip there.
It's actually really interesting because this brewery is different from other breweries in its size. Because a lot of the breweries that we go to, they're not necessarily large, but there is space to get your brew on and to move the hangari or the pots.
Right.
This place, on purpose, is tiny. It's a very little hole in the wall.
Wow.
And he has a specific reason for doing that because he believes that if you have a lot more space, then there's a lot more chances for your fermentation to not be successful. So he keeps everything very close to the fingertips, which is quite interesting.
Something about brewing that a lot of people don't realize. It's a lot like cooking, is when you're making something, about 80% of your workload is cleaning and sterilizing and washing everything down. So I guess by having a tiny brew space, you can avoid a lot of that stuff.
And just do this and clean.
Mix, carry.
Yeah. There's some method to the madness.
Okay, so tell me something unique that you learned about this brewery on your travel.
Something unique that I learned, it has been brewing for 40 years. This guy's been making the same recipe for 40 years. Also, it is a non-aspartame brew.
Yes!
Huzzah! They're so hard to find, and it is really heartening to hear of someone that actually really is very vocal about not using aspartame. There is a sweetener, there is some stevia, but it's not aspartame, which is generally something that's a bit more harsh and very strong to taste.
And stevia as a sweetener, unlike aspartame, it's a natural sweetener. So it comes from a stevia plant, which, you know, if I was to choose a sweetener, whether it was an artificial one or a natural one, I'd probably obviously go for the natural one every time.
I've been to a cafe in Seoul where my coffee was actually served with a straw and a little stevia leaf in the straw, so you drink it through the stevia, and it was delicious. I was...
So hip.
It was a little hip. I tried to have my best selfie face on while I was drinking it, but you know me, I failed.
Hashtag stevia coffee.
Hashtag not hip.
Okay.
But yes, Arirang is a very specially non-aspartame brew, and it's not very commonly found in Seoul, sadly.
No. In fact, the only place I've ever seen this in Seoul is when the brewer brings it to festivals in and around the city. Personally, he always brings a bunch of boxes. And I have to say that his stuff has been really popular, both with the older generation and the younger generation. I think what people like in this is that it is a very rustic, very kind of jeontong, traditional brew, but it's not overbearing in any way.
No, and it's we'll get into tasting. We have actually tasted it before, but it is it's a bit earthier. It's a bit more, I guess, meaty in some ways, which is quite interesting.
And I think some of that flavor comes from the nuruk, which is used, he makes it using a very specially selected type of wheat. So he's very particular about his brew in terms of the ingredients that go into it, and also in his technique of steaming his rice. He apparently has a very unique way of steaming the rice in order to prepare it for brewing as well. So I'm just really excited to drink some of this right now.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
You might have seen a recent video that we did with Boksundoga, which was quite more difficult to open.
I almost ruined these good clothes.
Oh, they're good clothes. Let's face it, all our clothes have been covered with makgeolli at one point or another. But one thing to notice, you can already see, it's actually the color is really different to a lot of makgeollis. It's more...
It matches the label almost perfectly.
I don't know if he's done that on purpose, but it really does blend aesthetically. But it's quite brown and a little pea green.
Yeah, there is a tinge to it.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's give it a go.
Wait,
I don't know how.
you handed that
I
off to
just
me
put,
as
no,
if you had
I put
some.
it down and you grabbed it. It was all your own thing.
So I learned this technique of squeezing the bottle to let some of that CO2
I
out a
can
little
hear
bit
the
first.
CO2 coming out.
Yeah, you shook that pretty hard.
I did. Well, actually, just a note. This has been sitting in the fridge for a little longer than normal. So when that happens, the sediment becomes very difficult to remove. So you have to shake it a little bit more strenuously.
Be good as shake.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got some skills today.
Oh, wow. Hey, but there's definitely a lot of carbonation in that bottle.
Yes.
It's frothing at the top. It looks good.
You know what's interesting? We did Boxundaga and the bubbles were super wide and hexagonal and you could see them very clearly. There's so many bubbles here, but they're tiny. They've integrated so clearly into
It's
the
almost
brew.
like the head of a beer.
It is. Let me get that for you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
I will say the contrast against the black cup, it almost looks like corn.
A little bit. That when you mentioned pea green earlier, I'm seeing it more now with the black background of the cup.
It's very, very different. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's have a smell. Ooh.
All right. Your reaction and my reaction are quite different. I'm sniffing this and I'm thinking like, I don't get a lot out of it. I get a very faint kind of like nodoki carbonated smell. But it's quite mild.
I am kind of different. I get like a very like overripe melon.
Ooh.
You know, like when melon becomes like that, like almost a slippery mess. That kind of smell that has.
I
haven't bought melons recently.
Not recently, and I think I've ate them quickly.
I actually have just bought them recently, and I'm like, maybe I'm projecting.
I think as I poured yours first, so it's had more contact with the air.
It has had more time. Let's swap.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, actually, yours is much more mild.
It's got a bit of a funky vibe.
They're actually remarkably different.
Mine has more in it.
I prefer mine.
Yeah. It's fuller cup. Let's taste it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Mmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very different. It's hard to evaluate. The first thing I noticed is that it's not very carbonated. It's one of those fully even though we had so many bubbles.
It looks carbonated, but by the time you drink it, it's pretty much settled.
It's actually quite silky, quite smooth, quite it's quite deceptive in terms of what it looks like, what you would expect it to be like.
The thing about this is like a lot of makgeollis tend to be quite acidic or sharp, and when you drink those, they hit your tongue first, and then they hit the sides of your mouth, and you get this big reaction. When you drink this, there's kind of nothing. It's a very I would say that like the pH of it feels really neutral because there's no that kind of instant hit, but it kind of builds in the aftertaste. Like you get a lot more of. I get the melon that you said about the aroma, but I get this kind of like this like fleshy, skinny kind of taste.
It's umami. It's savory. It's but you're right in terms of it's not sharp one way or another. It's not super sweet. It's not super dry. It's not super tangy. But it's just round. Like the flavor is very round. But I get a very heavy after aroma in the taste. I can actually breathe that kind of earthy, wet, grassy kind of. It's almost like it's a real rustic brew. It's a meat brew. It's something that you would definitely have with.
This is a great pairing for food, I think, because it doesn't. I don't think it's going to interrupt your experience of the taste of the food that you're eating. I think it's kind of like a nice palate cleanser. It's neutral enough to do that. It's so interesting though because it looks with the color. It looks like it's going to be really nudoki, really deep, earthy, but you don't get any of that.
It's really not. It's actually quite clean in terms of. Like you said, the pH. I just feel like it's just all the flavors are in the harmony that he is intending to produce. So I would say that I don't think that this would be a brew for everybody. I think it's something that you might be a bit put off by the color and the flavor matching. Yeah. But it's something that if you like these flavors, if you like that kind of savory, umami, silky, smoothie kind of flavors, then you would love this brew.
I definitely think if you're looking for your makgeolli to be sweet, you might be a little disappointed, but it's not dry either. It kind of rides that line right in the middle. So.
Which is kind of great because in the non-aspartame world, we often get presented with two options. It's either very sweet or
so dry.
So dry.
All my saliva's being eaten out.
It's gone. And we're seeing a lot more brews coming up with more balanced options or just expressions of what they want to drink. And we know this brewer, we talked to him a lot, and it's kind of like what he wants to make.
I'd say the brewer is a kind of a personification of his character in a lot of ways.
I would agree. So it's a great brew to try. Some things to note.
Right.
Not very easily accessible in Seoul, as we mentioned. The only time we manage to get our hands on it is if the brewer comes or does an event with us, or if we order directly from him in Wonju. There is one bar that I do know he stocks at. It's called Magkeolli in I think Socho. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's rare. I will say that it's quite rare.
Good thing about this is that it's remarkably cheap when we've bought it. It's always been like 3,000 won a bottle, 5,000 maybe, like when he was selling it expensively.
In Wonju, it's only 2,500.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
That's like green bottle prices.
I know. So it's great to have that option if you live in Wonju, or if you are able to get this in whatever supermarket that you're near. It's a great option to try.
And what about the alcohol percentage? It's quite low.
It's general. It's 6.5.
Wow.
Which is actually higher than you would expect. So usually it's 6 and 7.
It is a little bit, and why that's surprising is because you can't actually taste the alcohol. There's no kind of boozy after, kind of like you know, when the alcohol kind of like rises up and you kind of like feel like you're breathing booze for a while. Yeah,
feel the burn.
It's so smooth that, you know, I would accidentally drink too much of that.
I think we have accidentally drunk too much of that, perhaps once or twice. Also to note that the shelf life does affect this brew quite a lot. We've had some experience with storing it, and the flavor will change on you. And the brewer himself has actually said as much, and he has certain dates that he prefers to drink during its shelf life. He believes day 3, I think, was the best day.
Oh, really? That early?
That early is when it is, because there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. It's a 30-day shelf life.
Yeah.
But yeah, good cold storage is definitely a necessity for this
if
brew.
you take this home, you should definitely keep it in your fridge.
Yeah.
Like not next to your heating or anything like that.
Oh, don't put it on the ondel for the winter and see how you go. No.
Let's not.
Let's not.
So, I think we should finish this bottle now.
I think we should. So yeah, find Arirang, give it a go. Highly Sool Company recommended.
Cheers.
Cheers.